This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Oh, good. Hello. Welcome to Death by Southwest. Whoa, I almost just threw my microphone in my face. If you are watching on YouTube or Spotify or Patreon, this will be less exciting than yesterday's bonus episode. And if you watch that, let me just apologize again for how incredibly chaotic and ridiculous it was. I thought I could cook a meal that I've cooked a million times and also carry on like a conversation with myself, you guys, whatnot. Yeah, I can't do that. I'm so impressed. I have like a newfound respect for people who cook and talk about something other than cooking while they're cooking, because that was very difficult for me. And if you're watching this, I'm just noticing on my computer camera that I have like a rash. Maybe I get nervous before I do these, and that results in my neck turning incredibly red right now. We're not going to worry about that though. We're just going to jump right into the story. Although I saw a news story on Instagram when I was posting. Oh, I think I posted something today, like a clip from yesterday's chaotic, ridiculous recording. And I've talked about how I don't really scroll. I don't like sit and look at stuff on Instagram. I mean, that sounded so judgy. I don't mean that judgmentally. Like if you do, how that's so silly. Like I used to sit and scroll all the time. I found that a it I it often put me in a worse mood, or it would distract me for so long, and then I'd be in a bad mood because I had not gotten the things I needed to do done. I mean, like the same things that everyone deals with social media being such a huge part of our lives these days. Hold on, I have to readjust on this yoga ball that I'm sitting on. But when I go to post something on my own Instagram rather than like Jim's, or when I used to post for Joe and Ollie and stuff, I'll see the first thing that's, posted here. Maybe I'll scroll down and see one or two more. And so earlier today, I had seen a story about how AI will soon be able to tell us what our dogs and cats are thinking. And I was really interested in that. I did not read more about it, but I was just going to mention it. And then, so I opened up Instagram right now to find it. And instead saw a post from the Arizona Daily Star that says 3 pet dogs and at least 18 wild animals have died on Tuesday. Nope. Have died on Tucson's east side after someone deliberately left out poison for them along the Pantano Wash. I don't want to read more about this because it already breaks my heart. But for anyone who is in Tucson and perhaps lives along the Pantano Wash, maybe don't let your animals out today. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to go any further with that. Wow, I'm really getting a rash on my neck. I don't know what that's from. If you're watching this on Spotify, YouTube, or Patreon, you can witness this rash that has suddenly presented itself on my neck. Not sure what that's from. Yeah, that's it. I'm trying really hard to not talk for too long in the beginning of these Tuesday episodes and get right into the story. And today we have I was going to say we have a real doozy. Like I'm from 1950. They're all kind of doozies, obviously, but this one is not typical. Oops, I just did something. Oh no. Okay, there we go. I fixed it. This one is not typical because it is not a murder, or not a confirmed murder. And I don't know if I need to do this or not, but I know that I when I've done the unsolved cases, I've gotten feedback from people that are like, I hate the unsolved cases. So I feel like, okay, well, if you generally like the podcast, but you don't like the unsolved cases, then let me just tell you up front, this is unsolved because I don't want you to sit through something and then be pissed at the end. So if you are not a fan of unsolved cases, then this is not for you. But it is one that I actually saw a TikTok randomly, a TikTok about someone talking about this case, which prompted me to look further into it like 2 weeks ago. And I finally was still doing research today and had to like stop myself. And I was like, no, we're going to tell this story. I'm going to tell the story with as much information as I have right now because it's a rabbit hole. I went down like a Reddit rabbit hole looking for more information. There's so many theories. And, anyways, we'll get into all of that. But let's start by talking about where this takes place, which is, man, now I'm kicking myself. The main person in our story is and his family live in Missouri City, Texas. But it actually, I guess, takes place in Luling, Texas, which is not too far away from Missouri City. I'm actually gonna look it up right now because I should have done that ahead of time. Luling, city in Texas. And let's see. So, and I'll post, I mean, obviously, you know how to use a map and can look it up, but I'll post images of this. So, Luling and Missouri City are not too far apart, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So, let's jump back into Missouri City, Texas. It's located just outside of Houston, it's in southeastern Texas, about 75,000 residents today. So, not huge, but not super small either. The city covers a total area of about 30 square miles, of which this is interesting. I never get this when I look up like our sense of place stuff. 29 of those square miles are land, and 1.38 of those square miles are water, which is interesting. The elevation of Missouri City, Texas is about 75 feet above sea level. The city's history dates back to 1980. Two real estate investors from Houston purchased 4 square miles of land along this route, this railroad, the first railroad to operate in Texas's route. And they marketed the area to residents of St. Louis, Missouri, and named it Missouri City to attract settlers. But it was officially registered in Texas in 1894. 1919, oil was discovered near the area, which led to some economic growth. And it's a notable suburb of Houston, basically. And it's a popular place for people to live who are working in the greater Houston area if they want to live somewhere a little bit more suburban than Houston. So that is our basic info about Missouri City. Sorry, guys, I'm sitting on a yoga ball, so I'm continually readjusting myself. And the main person, the victim in our story today, is Jason David Landry, who was born on July 29th, 1999 in Augusta, Georgia. At the time that he was born, which confuses me a little bit, but his family lived in South Carolina, but he was born in Augusta, so maybe they were there visiting. Georgia, South Carolina, not far from each other. Over the years, they moved several times. They lived in Austin, Texas. They lived in Mississippi, and they eventually settled in Missouri City, Texas, which is where Jason spent most of his childhood and grew up. Jason was the youngest of 3 siblings. He had an older brother, Kyle, and an older sister, Jessica. His family was very close knit, very loving. Everything that I read about them was lovely. Sounded like a wholesome, beautiful family to grow up in. Jason's father, Kent, was a retired attorney who actually became a pastor at their local church. So they were a religious family. Jason's mother, Lisa, worked as a CPA. Something she was quoted as saying is that Jason had a smile that would allow him to get away with just about anything, which is a cute little tidbit. Um, Among the three siblings, Jason was really known as the creative one. He was tall, about 6'1", brown eyes. He had a kind of olive complexion and brown hair. Growing up, spending most of his childhood growing up in Texas, he developed a love for the outdoors. He loved baseball, swimming, kayaking, and he really loved music. He also had a huge love of Swedish fish, the candy, which is, if I'm in the candy aisle, not that you asked, but if I'm in the candy aisle, that's the last thing I'm going for. I'm going for all the chocolate Starburst and Skittles that I can. But he loved Swedish fish, and I love this fact about him. He loved quirky socks. So he was always wearing really brightly colored or themed socks with everything that everything he wore, no matter whether it was a fancy occasion, a casual occasion, he had quirky socks on. He also enjoyed video games, skateboarding. Some of these things that I found conflict, so I'm not sure if something I found is incorrect because that he enjoy. I guess you can enjoy the outdoors and baseball and swimming and kayaking, and also be a creative who loves music, plays the guitar, the trumpet, and also loves skateboarding and video games. It's a lot of interests, but perhaps they are all accurate. Um, but I did see him described in two very kind of conflicting ways. Some people described him as a little bit shy, but ready for a new adventure, a very free spirit. And then other people described him as extremely social and outgoing. So a little shy seems in direct kind of conflict to very social and outgoing, but who knows? So Jason attended Ridge Point High School in Missouri City, graduated in the spring of, again, I saw 2017 and I saw 2018. Doesn't make a big difference on in our story. After high school, he started college at Sam Houston University in Huntsville, Texas. It wasn't his first choice of school, but he was still excited to be there, happy to be going to college, and he really kind of embraced the college experience, so to speak, his first year there. And by that, I mean he enjoyed a college party. Why is Zoom? Oh, I must have made a thumbs up sign, so Zoom is giving me the thumbs up. Um, so he enjoyed partying and exploring all of the newfound freedoms that college offers when you are a first year student. So he also did spend a lot of time. He had a girlfriend his freshman year of college, so he did spend a lot of time with her. I read that his grades kind of started to slip due to his girlfriend, which feels a little unfair to me because if he was actually partying as much as it sounds like he was, maybe it wasn't his girlfriend that was causing his grades to slip. Neither here nor there, though. So after his freshman year, he decided to transfer to a local junior college that was closer to home. It was kind of this was kind of a turning point for Jason in his life. He was spending a lot of self introspection. Did I say that right? That feels right, but I'm sure I'll get a comment that it was wrong. He was looking inward. He was reflecting on his life, figuring out what he really wanted to do, where he wanted to go, things like that. He had had his fun this first year of college and now wanted to feel out what his direction might be. And so after he spent some time thinking and researching different options, does he want to stay in school? Does he want to transfer schools? Things like that. Um, like I said, he decided to transfer to a local junior college closer to home. And during that time, was reflecting a lot. And then he landed on Texas State University in San Marcos, which was about 3 hours west of Missouri City, about an hour south of Austin, Austin is supposed to be so fun. I've still never really been there, and I've driven through. I would love to go. Um, So the big draw for him about Texas State University was they had an excellent audio engineering program, which fit in perfectly with his love of music. So he was accepted into Texas State and planned to start his first semester there in the fall of 2020. His parents helped him move into an apartment near campus. And just as he was, finally like settling in, he was excited about his direction, about where he was planning to go. And then the university shut down due to COVID. So he was in a one bedroom apartment that his parents had helped him move into, and he was really struggling with the isolation because he was very isolated. He was just starting at this new school and didn't really know anyone, and now didn't have an opportunity to get to know anyone. And when I really stopped and was thinking about what that must have been like being in a, he's not, it's not like he's across the country from his family or friends. His friends are all spread out at different colleges, but still, he's several hours away from his family and doesn't really know anyone. And COVID was lonely for people who were quarantining with other people. He's quarantining alone. Um, so according to his dad, Kent, he fell into a bit of a slump, perhaps a little depression, um, and he started self-medicating with pot, which I have a there was really nothing. I'm trying to debate if I want to go into this or not. I guess I don't. I was going to say, in TV shows and stuff, when you're like, oh, people say like, oh, I'm addicted to pot or I went to rehab for pot. And again, I'm not, no judgment if there's anyone listening who has been addicted to pot or who has gone to rehab for pot. Personally, my experiences with pot and like how it was introduced to me or explained to me by my mom, it it was always presented to me as kind of like a harmless drug. And that may be, harmless and drug may be in direct kind of conflict with each other, but that's my feeling. So self-medicating with pot, I mean, you're locked in your apartment as a college student. You don't know anybody. I don't know, smoking a little pot and like doing some drawing or playing music or whatnot doesn't seem that harmful. But apparently, it was not a great time for Jason, is the overarching message here. He was really lonely, really wanted to be around people. So he went and got a job at the local Jimmy John's in San Marcos. Apparently, he had worked for a while at Jimmy John's in Missouri City. So this was kind of an easy job for him to kind of just hop into, make a little bit of money, and at least be around some people until in-person classes picked back up. So his first fall semester at Texas State was, completed essentially online and was wrapping up around December 11th. And we are in 2020 here. So wrapping up around December 11th, he was finishing his finals. He was planning to head home to Missouri City for the holidays, to spend the holidays with his family. Again, that's about a 3-hour drive away from where he was. His brother Kyle was actually attending Texas A&M in Austin, and he was also planning to drive home around the same time. So Kent and Lisa, their parents, were very excited to have all their kids coming back home. Jason hadn't told his parents an exact day. He had just said, finals, I think they're done around December 11th. I'm going to head home sometime around then within the next few days. So Kent and Lisa weren't necessarily expecting him at any specific day or time, but they expected him to be home that week. Also, Jason and his high school friends, who, like I mentioned, were, all at different colleges, they had planned a big reunion on December 13th, I believe, in Missouri City, to all hang out and play Call of Duty, which was something they loved doing together. So initially, Jason had planned to miss that get together and stay at his apartment in San Marcos and perhaps drive down the next morning. This was a Sunday night, Sunday the 13th. But he changed his mind. He thought, why am I not going home? Why am I not going to go join this get together and play Call of Duty? So he was planning to leave his apartment. His new plan was to leave his apartment in San Marcos around 8 p.m. on Sunday, drive the 3 hours to Missouri City, and meet up with his friends. In actuality, he ended up hitting the road a bit later. It's believed, and I'll get into kind of the timeline in a little bit, but it's believed that he left around 10:55 p.m. After after the fact, Jason's dad, Kent, had said if he had known that Jason was planning to drive so late at night, he would have urged him to wait until the morning, which I'm sure he wishes he had. So around, 10:55 to about 5 after 11, sometime around then, Jason, who was 21 years old, I don't think I said that at the time, he got in his gray Nissan Altima and started heading south on Texas Highway 80 toward Caldwell County. And this is known because he was apparently using the Waze app on his phone for navigation purposes. So around 11:07, Jason entered Caldwell County, passing through small towns like Fentress and Stairtown, and eventually coming upon the small town of, I really want to say Lulling, but I've heard it pronounced Luling. Several on several other videos that I watched about this. So we're going to go with Luling. And if it's wrong, I apologize. So the plan was that from Luling, he would connect to another highway leading to Interstate 10, which takes him most of the way back to Missouri. So for those, I actually, I was going to say, for those of you not familiar with the Southwest, but Interstate 10 goes, now I'm not going to be able to remember, but so driving from Atlanta to Tucson many times that I've done, the southernmost route is to take the 10. Now, the 10 doesn't go all the way to Atlanta, but I'd pick it up somewhere in, I can't remember, Louisiana, maybe, maybe not until Texas even. But it runs very close to the border of Mexico in certain areas. So Jason entered, and again, this was a very heavily covered story in the media. So there are conflicting times in some articles. I went with what I thought was the most accurate. So he was approaching Luling around 11:30 p.m. and he was coming up to a stoplight and he needed to turn right onto Magnolia Avenue in order to connect to Interstate 10, which would get him home. But at that moment, before he got up to that stoplight, he got a Snapchat notification. And for some reason, when he switched from Waze to Snapchat, his Waze app shut off. So he didn't have Waze guiding him anymore. He's looking at this Snapchat, which was apparently from his ex-girlfriend, and he missed his turn onto Magnolia Avenue, which again, he needed to get onto that road in order to get onto the 10. So instead of turning, he drove through that light and he ended up on East Austin Street, which eventually becomes Spruce Avenue, and then Salt Flat Road, otherwise known as Highway 128. These roads names mean nothing to me, but I know that we do have people who are in Texas who listen, so perhaps these are familiar to you. So basically, Jason needed to be going east, and this new route that he was on, because he missed his turn, was taking him north. Now, we don't know why, but, and I'm going to say that a lot, there are a lot of questionable details and just questions in this story to me. So this is one of those stories that I would love, if anyone's heard it, or if this is the first time you're hearing it, if you listen to the whole thing, I would love to hear your thoughts because I am stumped by this story. Okay, so he missed his turn. He's now going north instead of east. He's going in the wrong direction. But for some reason, he never turned his Waze app back on. Now, I don't know if everyone here is familiar with Snapchat, uses Snapchat. Just in case, I don't want to sound like I'm explaining something that is so simple everyone understands it, but just in case, Snapchat is generally used for sending pictures and video messages between friends. You can do group messages on the app. Um, it does. So I've noticed when I've used it in the past, if I'm listening to a podcast or music or something, and then I switch to Snapchat, like it uses the microphone. So it does sometimes mess up other apps. That was my first thought when I read this, that he never turned Waze back on. Does that mean that he just never reopened the app? Did it unexpectedly quit? Because when you're switching, I'm of course picturing an iPhone because that's what I have. I don't know exactly how it works on an Android, but you can switch between the apps. It doesn't mean that that app has closed. Like I can be on my Google Maps and then switch to my email, and the Google Maps is still running in the background. So I don't know. We don't know. That is a big question mark still. So that is that's the last kind of interaction that he has on his phone, is opening a Snapchat message from his ex-girlfriend. Nothing else. Now, about an hour after Jason passed through Luling and missed his turn, so remember that was around 11:30, a local volunteer fireman came across a car that was crashed in the 2300 block of Salt Flat Road. He came across this car around 12:31 a.m. And this was Jason's car, his Nissan Altima. So for reference, Jason still had about 2 hours left of the drive before reaching Missouri City. So he was just in the first leg of it. So this volunteer fireman comes across Jason's car. It's banged up. It's obviously been involved in some type of crash. And so he walks up to the car and he's expecting well, first he's looking like there's no other cars. There's just one. So right now it appears to be a one car crash. He's trying to kind of feel out what's going on, and he goes up to look to see if the person who is Jason is inside the car. But when he approaches the car, Jason's not there. So he calls the authorities right away. And just to kind of set the scene, the road where Jason crashed, the portion he was on, it was not paved. Now the road begins paved. Remember how I said it starts off as this road and then turns into this and then this. So it does begin as a paved road, but as you go further down this road, it is not paved and it turns into gravel. So he was about 2 miles past where it was paved. So he had been about 2 miles on the gravel, kind of like a packed gravel road, like loose gravel. I don't know why I keep saying gravel so many times. It's gravel. There, I said it again. Everybody knows what gravel is. Can be tough to navigate gravel, especially in the dark. I don't know if in the dark really matters, but just, you have to go slower than if you're on a paved road. I don't know why I am talking about this so much. This is such a small part of the story. I'm going to move on. So the firefighters kind of looking and trying to figure out what might have happened here. It looked like Jason's car maybe fishtailed on the gravel shoulder of the road. And then he tried to overcorrect and ended up crashing into a tree and a barbed wire fence. So on the off chance that no one has driven on gravel or in icy, snowy, rainy, wet conditions, fishtailing is when the back tires lose a bit of traction and the back of the car kind of slides from side to side. So, I feel like natural instinct is to grab the steering wheel and jerk it one way or the other. At least that's my natural instinct, which I'm quite certain is incorrect. But that's kind of what the firefighters thinking happened here. So he's speculating the car fishtailed, Jason overcorrected, and then the back of Jason's car hit a tree with the rear driver's side of the car, because there's damage there to the rear driver's side of the car. And that caused his car to kind of spin. And then the front driver's side hit another tree and kind of slid into a barbed wire fence. So I know that might be hard to picture. I do have some photos that I can post of this. Essentially, he lost control of his car. It maybe hit a tree and then that forced him to hit another tree. That's all they know at this point. When the local law enforcement arrived, Jason's headlights were still on. His keys were in the ignition and the passenger door was locked. So that indicates the only way he could have gotten out of the car is from the driver's side door, which was, from what I understand, pressed up a bit to this barbed wire fence. He's in a he's in a very rural area. So Luling, from what I gather, and stupidly, I researched Missouri City more than I did Luling, but Luling is a small rural town. There's only around 6,000 people that live there. Most of the residents work in nearby oil fields. It's not a hustling, bustling city. It's not even really a big town. It's just a very, very small rural town. I don't know why I'm repeating myself so much in this episode, but I'll try to stop. Um, so to recap, headlights are on, keys are in the ignition, passenger door is locked, assuming the driver's side door is how he got out. No airbags have been deployed. And of course, the unsettling part is that Jason is seemingly nowhere to be found. So around 1:30 a.m., Jason's parents, Kent and Lisa, get a call from police. I think it was a little later than 1:30 a.m., but that's what I have written down. They were told that one of their sons had been in a car accident, but it wasn't serious and didn't appear to have fatal injuries. Now, what there seems to be a lot of missing information in this story because I would love to have that exact transcript of this phone call to Jason's parents. Now, did they say your son Jason has been in a car crash? Well, that seems like something that you would say, a normal thing to say. And they have to, you would think that they would know that it's their son because how else did they get their number? How are they calling them? So I kind of had to piece this together. So because Lisa, Jason's mom, initially thought that the crash may have involved her other son, Kyle, because the police mentioned Caldwell County. They're calling from Caldwell County. That's where Texas A&M is located. That's where Kyle goes to school. But then the police described the vehicle, the Nissan Altima, and they realized it was Jason's car. So what I'm thinking is at this point that the police must have found the registration because the car was registered to Kent, Jason's father. And that's how I'm assuming that they got in touch with Lisa and Kent. So they realized it was Jason's car. And this also blows my mind. Apparently, Kent used the Find My Friends app and tracked Jason's phone, saw that it was in Luling, and immediately headed towards Luling. Also, why would he need to do that? Why wouldn't the police just say, this is what we're on Salt Flat Road in Luling, come here? So the way that this was handled from the very, very beginning, to me, leaves so many questions because this seems like the most straightforward part of an investigation. You find a car that has been in an accident, the lights are on, the keys are in it. There's nobody there. There's no driver there. So great. You find the registration, call it, and then say exactly that. We found this car in the middle of the road. It's obviously been in some type of accident. We can't find anyone around here. This is our location. Would you like to come here? The officer did mention that he found Jason's black backpack about 100 feet from the crash site. I saw a bunch of articles that said this. This also conflicts a little bit with some other stuff that we're going to get to in a second. So Kent arrived in Luling between 4 and 5 a.m. It was just a couple hours after the crash had been discovered and authorities had gotten there. Lisa stayed at home just in case Jason showed up there. So when Kent got to the crash site, it was very weird because he realized there's no one here. There's no car here. There's no one searching here. There's no police officers here. Nothing. And blows my mind. I don't know what I would have done. First of all, like, how did he even know that this was the spot? I guess he must have taken a screenshot or saved the exact location where Jason's Find My Friends app told him to go. Because when he got there, the car had already been towed, taken to the impound lot. There were no police. There was no police tape. There was no investigation, no flashing lights, nothing, which seems really strange. Now, this was later explained to Kent, police said, crashes like this happen really, really often. People wreck their car, especially if there's a DUI or drug situation, and then they just walk away because they don't want to get caught. Apparently, it's super common, and people come back a few days later looking for their car. So, from their perspective, there was no foul play here. There was no crime committed. They assumed Jason. They didn't think that Jason was missing. They thought that Jason had just crashed his car and didn't want to get in trouble and walked away. But to Kent, Jason's dad, this was crazy. Like, why is no one out here looking for my kid? He couldn't kind of fathom that Jason would just walk away from his car. He didn't, assuming he didn't hurt anybody else. There didn't seem to be another vehicle involved, not another person involved. Why would he just walk away from his car late at night in the freezing cold? It made no sense to him. For Jason's family as well, not just Kent. Of course, he called his wife. This was not a reasonable explanation. The temperatures were freezing based on records. If you look back, the average temperature in that area was around 36 degrees, but because of the wind, it was reported to have dropped as low as 19 degrees that night. It was freezing, regardless of the temperature. Also, another weird fact, the highway patrolman who had called and notified the family about Jason's crash went home, like the car got towed, and then he went home and went to bed and didn't share with anyone else on duty that night about the crash and that there was a 21-year-old person who was in this crash and they couldn't find him. Like, this patrolman just had the car towed, called the parents to inform them, and then went home and went to sleep. No report, no nothing, at least not that night, which seems, I can't imagine that that's protocol. So Kent is searching the area near the crash site. Now, look, this next part, I've heard it both ways. I don't know which one makes more sense. The bottom line is that Kent came across Jason's clothes scattered across the road, not just like yards away from where the crash had presumably happened. He found a shirt with a Christian camp logo that he recognized as Jason's, shorts. He immediately recognized Jason's bright yellow SpongeBob socks, underwear, and slide sandals, and Jason's wristwatch. All of these items were kind of strewn across the street, the side of the street, not far from where the car supposedly crashed. And Kent was obviously like shocked and distraught. Why are my son's clothes that he was likely wearing all over the side of the highway? Because it wasn't like multiple pairs of underwear or multiple shoes. It wasn't like there was a suitcase that somebody had accidentally emptied or that it had flown from the car when he was driving. It was just clothes that later were confirmed to have been the clothes that Jason was wearing. So obviously Kent didn't know that for sure right now, but due to Snapchats that Jason took earlier that night, he was wearing this exact outfit. And what really stood out to Kent was the watch, because apparently it was a family heirloom, and he knew that there was absolutely no way that Jason would have left this watch anywhere, let alone on the side of the road. So I did read some accounts that Kent, he came up to the site, he saw like remnants of an accident, so pieces of Jason's car. He saw a tree that looked like it had been injured in some way. And then he came across the clothes. Other accounts I read were that as Kent is coming upon where he thinks this crash site is, he sees these bright yellow socks in the road and recognizes them as Jason's SpongeBob socks and gets out and like starts collecting his son's clothes from the street, is super confused as to why they haven't been collected by anybody else, as to why they're there in the first place, certainly. And then he continues driving on and comes upon and sees like pieces of the Nissan Altima and whatnot. Awful either way, whether you find the clothes first or after the fact. I mean, Absolutely terrible. And really confusing as to how no one out, like the volunteer firefighter, the patrolman, the tow truck driver, how did no one else who was in and around and all over this kind of area, how did they not notice these clothes? To me, it seems impossible, honestly. Um, again, like I said, I got really deep into web sleuths and Reddit on this one. And a lot of people said, well, maybe they didn't connect it. Maybe they just assumed it was random clothes. Really? In the middle of like a rural oil area where there really aren't people or houses or anything, there's a car crash, and then there's essentially an entire outfit that someone was wearing, a couple hundred feet away, maybe not even a couple hundred feet, less than that. And we're not going to think that they're connected in December, freezing temperature. Like it just seems very peculiar to me, but fine. Okay. They didn't notice the clothes. They didn't see the clothes. They didn't think that the clothes were related to the car crash. Any or all of the above had to be the case because the car was gone, troopers were gone, patrolmen were gone, the clothes were still there. So Kent is now looking like at the Find My Friends app again, like where did the car go? Again, why did no one tell this poor man your son's car is being towed to the impound lot? That seems like a very simple thing to do that would have perhaps alleviated a lot of stress for Kent. Um, but no, he had to go in the Find My Friends app again to see that his son, who's presumably missing now, that his car was at the impound lot. So further examination of the car kind of confirmed what the volunteer fireman who found the car suspected. There was front driver's side damage and back driver's side damage. The back window had kind of blown out during the crash. So it matched up to what the firefighter was speculating. Now, inside of the car, there were several of Jason's belongings. So he had a backpack that officer, whoever spoke to Jason's parents, said we found his backpack about 100 feet from the car. So they put that back in the car. They found a plastic bag with toiletry items, a baseball hat. They found a tumbler with a dead betta fish in it. It was Jason's pet fish that likely he was bringing home with him. And after the crash, it was 36 degrees, if not colder that night. So the fish died. Once they investigated inside of his backpack, they found a laptop, some gaming equipment. Remember, he was going home. He was excited to play Call of Duty with his friends that night. They found his wallet and they found a few other personal items and a little bit of marijuana. Now, what the police didn't find was the cell phone, but Jason's father from the Find My Friends app saw that Jason's phone was at the impound lot with his car. And because the car was actually registered to Kent, Kent was allowed to go and go inside the car and look for it because this is not considered a crime scene yet. So like this is not even evidence, Kent collected the clothes and then had to hand those over to the police at a certain point because the police weren't even looking at this as any kind of crime. So Kent went to the impound lot and found Jason's phone wedged in between the driver's seat and the center console. So, like where you snap your seatbelt in, it's so easy for phones. I feel like my phone has fallen down there a million times. And so Kent found the phone there and was like, okay, well, I understand why maybe Jason didn't grab it right away because he was flustered from the accident, presumably. You know, he wasn't thinking straight. He couldn't get his hand down there. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. No one knew at this point. All of Jason's personal items were eventually released to Kent, except for the phone and laptop, which were kept by police for analysis. So the timeline that I mentioned earlier. Whew. So the police, once Kent had to bring the his son's clothes that were strewn across the road and the cell phone that he found in the car to police, police are now like, okay, well, yeah, where is he? It's a missing person now. Whereas initially they weren't looking at it like that. So, based on the cell phone data, Jason's cars, GPS, and surveillance footage from the towns that he passed through and where he was driving that night, as well as I believe talking to some of his family and friends. Sorry, guys, I'm resituating. The evening of December 13th, again, was planning to leave to go to Missouri City to his parents' house around 8:30. Around 10 p.m., he took some Snapchat photos of himself, which is how they knew that the clothes that were found in the road were the clothes that he was actually wearing that night on his body. At 10:55 p.m., he put his parents' address into the Waze app and got in his car. Right before he left San Marcos, he texted a friend, said, "Bye, I'm heading home." His last known communication was a Snapchat that he sent to a friend. I don't know if it's his ex-girlfriend. I just saw a friend also around 10:55. So when he was leaving his apartment, basically, is the last time that he had any communication out with anybody. Although we know that his girlfriend sent him a snap at some point later when he missed that turn. So the presumed timeline: 10:55, he leaves his apartment heading to Missouri City. 11:05, he's driving on Highway 80, passes under I-35. 11:07, he enters Caldwell County on Highway 80 heading south. 11:11, he enters Martindale, still heading south on Highway 80. 11:15, he passes over Highway 130 on Highway 80. 11:17 to 11:21, he passes through Fentress, Prairie Lea, and Stairtown. And 11:24, he enters Luling on Highway 80. He then continued onto Austin Street to Magnolia Avenue, and then straight through that intersection onto East Austin. But that intersection is where essentially his digital footprint is said to have stopped. Now, his phone is still on. Obviously, his dad tracked his phone to the impound lot and was able to get it there. But he's no longer interacting with any apps, the Waze app, Snapchat, nothing. There's no indication that he was using his phone at all past this intersection. And then his car was found abandoned around 12:30 on the early morning of December 14th on Salt Flat Road. So there's about and it's very specific, but I heard this on every single video article that I read. There's a 67-minute window between his last data footprint, kind of like right at that intersection at Austin and Magnolia, and the discovery of the crash at 12:31 on Salt Flat Road. So he had cell phone signal. His phone was on. It was trackable, but he just simply wasn't using it. Like, why after he crashed, sorry guys, I'm continually resituating. Why after he crashed did he not fish his phone out from next to the seat? Why did he not try to call somebody? Even if there was kind of spotty service there, this was in 2020. This wasn't that long ago, the end of 2020. I believe that advances in most phones allow you, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this. I know today most phones allow you to contact emergency services, even if you don't have, like, I have a setting on my iPhone to like allow satellite communication for emergency services. I'm probably not saying that exactly as it says it in my phone, but so I suppose maybe this wasn't available on his phone. Still, it's odd that he was very active on his phone, using the Waze app, using Snapchat, communicating, and then goes through, misses his turn at this intersection and never touches his phone again, though it remains on. And, you know, robbery is not something that is in anyone's mind because his computer, his gaming stuff, his wallet, like nothing was taken. Everything was there. It's just weird. And it just gets weirder, guys. So there was no blood found at the crash site or found inside of Jason's car, but there was a a small amount of blood, just like a droplet of blood on the elastic band of his underwear that was found on the road. And then some accounts said that there was small spots of blood inside his shorts that were also found on the road. So no blood in the car, no blood around the car, nothing, but on the waistband of his underwear and on the inside of his shorts. So police theorized, they thought that this blood could have come from the barbed wire fence near the crash. Like if he's trying to get out of his car and it's kind of pressed up against this barbed wire fence, perhaps he scratched himself. Maybe he was trying to walk, like, I'm using hand motion. So if you're listening, you can't see, but barbed wire, I don't mean barbed wire like how there's rings of barbed wire at the top of like a jail fence. I mean barbed wire like it was a metal fence with, you see this a lot with like cattle fields, three pieces of barbed wire on top of each other to form a fence, with like a foot of space in between each one. I hope I'm explaining that correctly. So maybe he's trying to like go through the fence and it got snagged on his waist, something like that. Um, there's also apparently a lot of what was described as rough foliage. So I'm assuming some prickly cacti or other, plants of the sort. Maybe, maybe. Seems weird. The morning of December 15th, Jason's brother Kyle woke up with a ton of text messages and missed calls from their mom. She was telling him what happened earlier that morning. So Kyle knew he had to get home immediately and help search for Jason. That was Henry. That is a result of his heart tumor. Hi, buddy. I know the dogs are hungry. Um, So by the time that Kyle got to Luling that afternoon to help with the search, his mom Lisa was there, dad Kent was there, several aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone kind of pulled together and showed up in Luling to speak with law enforcement and to try and figure out what happened and start looking for Jason. The family at this point is still hoping that Jason maybe found a ride, that he managed to walk to somewhere where someone called transportation services for him, something either to Houston, to Missouri City, back to his apartment in San Marcos. This is what they're hoping right now. So the investigation is now, getting underway. Search efforts are getting underway. And first and foremost, police, as always, or as often they do, are focused on contacting Jason's friends, acquaintances, talking to family, hoping that maybe someone heard from him or he talked to them before he left. He was active on social media, so they are, working as quickly as possible to pull data and information from his phone. But after that first day on the 15th of really talking to everyone they could, kind of a social media deep dive, email, text messages, things like that, there was really no leads, no clues. They had no idea. The next day on December 16th, they brought search dogs in to help investigate the area surrounding the crash site. And at first, it seemed promising. The dogs led police first to a cattle guard. So if you I don't think I'd ever seen a cattle guard when I lived in Chicago, so I don't know. But I hate them because I just picture cows getting their hooves stuck in there, which is the point. It's to keep cows from leaving the pasture, but it's like a grate on the ground that the spaces in between the metal bars are too big or too small. It's uncomfortable for cows to walk across, and so they avoid it or they get stuck. There we go. Uh, but there was nothing. They looked under the cattle guard, because there's like a hole under the cattle guard. There was nothing there. No clues, no nothing. The canines also led police to a small pond on the nearby in the area. They thought maybe he had hit his head in the accident and then stumbled and fallen into the water. They eventually drained the pond and there was nothing. No clues, no evidence, no Jason. So at this point, they reached out to Texas EquuSearch, a well known search and rescue organization, to help assist in the effort. It's a nonprofit organization founded in 2000 by a man named Tim Miller. His daughter, Laura, was abducted and murdered in 1984 in Texas. So he created this search and rescue organization to help families of missing people using a ton of different search methods, divers, drones, sonar equipment, boats, dogs, everything possible. So all of these resources were now deployed in an effort to locate Jason, and an intense 9 day search ensued. For 9 straight days and nights, a massive search was conducted. Helicopters, drones, ATVs, search dogs, infrared cameras, volunteers on foot, volunteers on horseback, everything. And it was tons of people, tons of law enforcement, tons of volunteers searching this entire area. 31 square miles were covered during those 9 days, and nothing, not a speck of clothing, blood, hair, nothing came up. Nothing came from it. I have this quote. I'm not sure this is the place to put it, but I'm afraid I'll forget if I don't say it now because, the clothing thing, his clothes, how they weren't collected. No one, like, so far to me, the search, yeah, it sounds like they're putting a lot of resources into the search, but the initial investigation, there wasn't any. The car was towed before it could be, processed by crime scene investigators because they didn't think it was a crime scene. And I get that. I guess I can understand not thinking it's a crime scene immediately, but like hold on. Like let's wait till the parents get here and find out, do they, you know, did their son tend to run away? Did they, like you don't tow the car, leave all this other evidence there and go home and go to sleep, which is exactly what happened. So Caldwell County Captain Jeff Ferry admitted that things weren't done perfectly in the investigation. Like, no shit. He said, quote, "There was no inventory conducted. I don't know why. That's a highway patrol question. The trooper does not go into the vehicle. I don't know why. That's a highway patrol question. And the trooper did not place a hold on the vehicle. I also don't know why. That's a highway patrol question." So really felt to a lot of people like he was just pushing off the blame onto, well, highway patrol. So the search, not as intense as those 9 days, but the search is still continuing. This is still an open investigation. But as time passes, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, and a lot of speculation because there is really no evidence, none. There's no evidence of another car being involved, of another person being around, no evidence of foul play, nothing was stolen, no blood. Like, it's a mystery in every sense of the word at this point. So speculation is running rampant. And there were a couple kind of initially popular theories. Some speculated that it was a voluntary disappearance, that Jason may have decided to walk away from his life. And I did find a big Reddit post on this that I will share. But I guess I can just say it when I get to the Reddit post that I don't, people on Reddit are web sleuths most of the time. There's very few people who are actually related to, connected to the victims or who are actual investigators, law enforcement, anything like that. So it's, armchair detectives, which is why I try not to actually share things from Reddit that much or too much because it's there's no evidence to support a lot of the things. It's just people talking, people theorizing, and sometimes there's interesting theories and thoughts and whatnot. I mean, I guess essentially I'm nothing more than an armchair storyteller, so can't really judge, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So, a voluntary disappearance was one theory that was certainly floating around. But the fact that he was pretty close to his family and excited about this new path that he was on with audio engineering, it makes it seem unlikely. An accidental death was another theory, that he may have been disoriented, that he got a concussion in the crash, and got out and walked, and then hypothermia, dehydration, things like that. The road, again, was rural. Like, I need to say that again, but I will. It was surrounded by open farmland, wooded areas, fields, ponds, not a lot of people, not a lot of homes. If he was injured, there was nowhere that he could have like quickly or easily stumbled to for help. And then, of course, a theory was foul play. Now, there was no evidence of foul play, but there was no evidence of anything. So the lack of kind of answers made people suspicious. Some people pointed out that the area where his car was found was known for drug trafficking. And I watched. There are really strong feelings on this on both sides. Tons of people are like, no, it's not. That's absolutely untrue. It's not drug trafficking. It's oil fields and it's farmland and farmers and not drug trafficking. And then other people were like, yes, it absolutely is. That's 100% for cartels. What? Look, the cartel activity and drug trafficking is something that is just a fact from my experience and knowledge of living here in the Southwest, and I'm 60 miles from Mexico right now. It just is. It is. That's what happens along the border. Not everywhere, not always, but it is. And the 10 I've driven on many times. And the 10, I know I've talked about this on a previous episode when driving on the 10 through El Paso. I mean, on one side of the highway is Texas, and on the other side of the highway is Mexico. And I could spit and it would land in Mexico. That's literally how close you are. So the people who said, absolutely not, there's no possible way that drug trafficking happens here. That couldn't happen. There's no cartel in this area. I don't buy that for sure, because I think that there's drug activity and trafficking and cartel activity a lot along the border and a lot along the 10. That's why there's so many border patrol stops when you're driving on the 10. Here I did have this one little tidbit that I found somebody shared on Reddit in one of these conversations, said Interstate 10, which I do agree with this. Interstate 10, not necessarily Salt Flat Road or Luling or any of that, but the 10 parts of it are major human and drug trafficking corridors for the cartel and other smugglers in Texas. This person who wrote this said the retired FBI agent knows more about crime in Texas than I do, but I'm sure he's taking into account that cartel could be the reason of Jason's disappearance. It's quite scary how common it is that people get snatched up in Texas for trafficking, and I'm a bit surprised most people in the comments still believe he died of natural causes despite all the red flags that there could have been foul play. Look up the Texas Triangle and you can find out more about it yourself. I did not look up the Texas Triangle because there's already too much information with just covering this story, but it is something that I'm writing down again because I don't know where I wrote it down earlier, and am going to look up. And what did I want to say? In researching this, I came across so many other stories of men mostly getting in car accidents in Texas, somewhere in Texas, and disappearing and never being found. And so that's all I'm going to say because it is something I want to look more into. I know that there's a couple, well, more than a couple other stories of this type of thing. So, other theories. Jason may have been carjacked at the stoplight in Luling, and then his attackers disposed of his body afterwards. Well, that wouldn't really make sense because he made it past the stoplight. He got in a car accident further down. Now, I guess they could have taken his car, crashed it, made it look like whatever. Another theory is that maybe he crashed his car and then someone picked him up. He was hitchhiking. Again, all of these are rumors. None of these, there's no evidence to support any of them. The one detail about this crash, Indiana, you're going to have to wait. The one detail about this crash that still, to me, is the most. What? You want to say hello? Say hello. Nope, no kisses on the face. Yeah, I know. You want dinner. You're going to have to wait. Okay? Sorry, guys. Please excuse this interruption from Indiana. And we have Henry down here as well. All right, guys, come on. Give me a little bit more longer. So, one of the biggest questions for sure is the clothes. To me, yes, the blood on the underwear is weird. The the wallet, the laptop, all of that being left, how the police handle it, it's all weird. But the clothes found near the crash site, those were the clothes he was wearing. It was 36 degrees out. Um, so there are some theories on this as well. And I knew nothing about what I'm about to share with you. So luckily, Jenna's not here. She can't ask me any questions because I don't know the answers because, again, a lot of information here. But one way that people explained this clothing is something called paradoxical undressing. It's a condition that can occur in people who are suffering from hypothermia because essentially when someone becomes so cold that they're either hypothermic or veering on hypothermic, their body can misfire, kind of like give the wrong signals, misfire. So even if you're freezing cold, this can make you feel like you're burning up, like you're on fire almost. And I guess I've probably heard of that, but I didn't realize that it made you feel like you're on fire. So the theory is that maybe Jason got knocked out when he crashed. And so he was unconscious in his car for what, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes. And the car got cold enough that his body temperature dropped and he developed hypothermia. So when he woke up, he may have already been feeling these effects of hypothermia, the kind of he's so cold that he's burning up. And then this paradoxical undressing has been documented in other hypothermia cases, where you feel like you're burning up, so you rip your clothes off. Another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with paradoxical undressing is a phenomenon called terminal burrowing or hide and die syndrome. This is thought to occur during the final stage of hypothermia. In this state, people instinctively seek shelter, so they'll burrow themselves into small protected areas in an attempt to survive. So, according to research that's been performed mostly in Germany, this is an autonomous brainstem response, something that is seen even in animals, like when they go to hibernate. So, you know, if these, there's so many ifs. If he got knocked unconscious in the car, and if he woke up and was having hypothermia and it caused him to feel like he was burning up and ripping his clothes off, I mean, I guess that seems like it could. And then, he's your primal instincts kind of kick in at this point. Your primal instinct to survive takes over, and it can be difficult when that happens to predict how someone's going to act. They're not going to act in a way that a completely healthy, normal person who's not trying to, in that exact moment survive would act. So it'd be hard to like get yourself in his headspace and figure out maybe what he was doing. So if, sorry, I just can't help think. So many ifs. If he got knocked out, if he woke up with hypothermia, if he got out of the car and was like, "Where am I? Where?" He was disoriented, and then the hypothermia is setting in. He feels like he's burning up. He's ripping off his clothes, and then he starts walking, and the hypothermia obviously is getting worse because he's now naked in 36 degrees, no shoes, no socks, no underwear, nothing. Then his primal instinct to like find a hole and burrow may have kicked in, and he may have done that, and that's that. But they covered 30 something miles with dogs, drones, heat sensors. Like if he had fallen into well, he didn't fall in the pond, but if he had fallen into, there's mines around there. So he could have fallen into a mine. Now, yes, I understand some mines are, whoa, like so deep that no dog is going to smell anything. But wouldn't they still smell his smell like leading up to that mine or leading up to that wherever he burrowed? It seems unlikely that he went further than 10, 15, let alone 30 miles from where he crashed to the point where he wouldn't be found. I mean, like you'd find something. The dogs would pick up something. The heat sensors, the drones would pick up something. I don't get it. And then the other big question is the blood on the elastic band of his underwear and inside of his shorts. Um, and not necessarily the blood, but why was this blood not? I couldn't find anywhere that said the blood was tested. It was Jason's blood. It was Jason's DNA, or it was someone else's, or there wasn't enough blood to tell whose it was. Nowhere did I find anything that said that this blood was tested, which the only reason I can possibly imagine that is because Kent is the one who found Jason's clothes. And so, like, the chain of command, there wasn't a chain of command. Like, Kent brought the clothes in, there was no officer or whoever who found the clothes. That's the only thing that I can possibly think as to why they might not do that, run the DNA. But that feels like a police officer fail for sure. And I mean, beyond the clothing in the road, the blood that wasn't tested, of course, the fact that Jason hasn't been found is the weirdest part of this. Canines, the Equa search and rescue thing that Tim Miller started, all the advanced equipment, you'd expect something to turn up. They used a criminology expert from Texas State worked with law enforcement, Dr. Kim Rossmo, to use drone imaging in the search for Jason or to search for his remains. The drones take thousands of images and a computer system scans them for specific colors. So if someone went missing wearing a red shirt, which was that church shirt that Jason was wearing that night that he was driving home, it was like a muted red, but the system's going to focus on red items in these thousands of images. But since his clothes were found near his car, that made this even harder with the drones because he was naked. They don't have a color to search for. Um, so they had the computer scanning for white objects, hoping to locate bones, because at this point, his family believes he is deceased. And the computer did flag several areas with bones, and they did go to investigate them, but they were always determined to not be human bones. Another resource that was used is geofencing. It creates a GPS perimeter to gather cell phone data from a specific area. So this was part of, was it last week's story? I think it was last week's story where there was only one other phone pinging off the same tower as if this was Sasha last week, I believe. Um, and that's how they caught her killer. He was the only other one in the area. So, using this technology, the law enforcement requested a cell tower dump to see which phones connected to a tower within a certain location and time frame that Jason was. So Jason's phone was there. The volunteer firefighter's phone was there since he made the phone call. And so they were looking for a third phone that might be detected in that area, and then that person would instantly become a person of interest in the disappearance. Seems like a really great option. Unfortunately, they did get the geofence warrant. They pulled all that data, and no other phone pinged in that area that night at the time of the accident or around that time. And they used AI to search a year's worth of drone images. Nothing. So again, now even police have theories. Before it was kind of like, people in the town, friends, family speculating because there were no answers. And now police at this point were 4 years this past December. And police are like, well, maybe he's walking along the road for help, and a drunk driver or someone who just couldn't see, because this is a rural road. There's no lights. It's dark. It's gravel. So obviously it's easy to kind of spin out of control. Maybe they hit him and they panicked and took the body to dispose of it somewhere else. So if that happened, then yeah, of course, we're not going to find him because we're just searching this 30-mile radius here. Um, you know, Apparently that night, like I said, there's very few houses. There's not like street lamps. And that night in particular, the moon itself wasn't very visible. So it was basically pitch black. He could have easily been hit. Um, People said if that had happened, then maybe they removed his clothes to make him harder to identify, which who actually would think that now with DNA testing? Like, you find a bone, a tooth, a hair, a drop of blood, and you can identify who that person is. Well, if they're in the system, I guess. So I'm not going to read this whole thing. And I want to really preface this. This is the Reddit bit. It's just something that I didn't see anywhere else. I saw this woman or man basically leave like a dissertation here in this Reddit post discussion. And I am not putting this out there as fact. I am putting this out there as a possible big speculation, because Jason isn't here to kind of speak for himself. So I don't want to put any negative rumors out about him or his family. But I do think I don't know where this person came up with this, but here we go. I'm going to tell you. So this person says, okay, guys, I appreciate all the comments. And I don't know why they're saying that. Like, did they, maybe they started the discussion, but they say, but drug cartels were not using Jason Landry as a mule, and the kid was not involved with a drug or human trafficking ring. I can all but guarantee this. The first clue is the searches on his electronic device, which several of them asked Google, how long can one survive in the wild? Excuse me, this gives the notion that he is trying to run away or disappear. But why would he want to disappear? Well, he comes from an ultra orthodox traditional conservative Christian home, which in which dad is a preacher. Now, yes, dad is a preacher. I did not read anywhere that they were ultra conservative or ultra orthodox. I didn't see anything about that. His dad was involved with Camp Choye, a traditional Christian summer camp that has been known to be covertly known as a gay conversion camp. And that's what the T-shirt that Jason was wearing that night that was then found in the road. It was a Choye, CHO-YEH. That was the name of the summer camp. So back to this person's writings. So Orthodox Christian family, Orthodox preaching father. One can assume that Jason was a very sheltered kid, along with the assumption that any actions, thoughts, or beliefs outside of what was considered normal for his family's belief system would not be welcome. So there have been, again, this is not fact, but this person says there have been numerous reports that Jason was gay, but not open about it. Or at the very least that he was experimenting, which would obviously bring him a lot of shame. Again, these are this person's words, given that his father sponsors a gay conversion camp. Regardless of if the words were never said to him, I'm sure he felt like he would be shunned and unwelcome. We don't know for sure, but I come from the same type of family and I can appreciate that train of thought. So college rolls around and you've now got a young man who is confused, looking to sow his wild oats in a world that is completely foreign and new to him. He gets involved with drugs, he gets involved with drugs like I did, is what the author of this is saying, and finds a world he never knew existed, but it provides him with an escape. As he grows more as a person and becomes more independent, he starts to hold resentments, whether real or perceived, about his family, just like I did, and decides that he wants to 86, which I think is completely reasonable. He concocts a plan to disappear, then sets it in motion. The reasons I believe this is the correct theory is that the crime scene is amateurly staged. There's no kidnapper or drug cartel that would leave behind so much evidence, which is weird to me because what evidence? The clothes? But this person says they operate in the shadows and wouldn't leave any trace whatsoever, including the vehicle, which coming to, speaking of a drug cartel, I tend to agree with that. They don't stage crime scenes. They eliminate people from existence. All of that person. Yeah, yes, that tends to be often very true. Then I'm not going to read all of it, like I said, but then this person says everyone assumes he was naked. If he staged the scene, he would have obviously had another set of everything while leaving behind the items that looked like he was wearing. It's not hard to have an extra set of clothes, an extra burner phone on backup. If someone was planning on disappearing by staging a scene that looked like they were kidnapped, they would establish a timeline and FaceTime or Snapchat with a person beforehand in order to prove that something went horribly wrong. If all of a sudden I quit hearing from my brother and no one else heard from him, especially in the days leading up to the incident, it's safe to say, in my opinion, that they were victims of foul play. If I wanted to stage a scene, I would establish contact with someone I was planning on meeting or going to see in the coming hours or day. Then when I didn't show up, people would assume I was the victim of foul play due to already having established plans, which is exactly what Jason did. Yeah. Then this person goes on to kind of debunk the paradoxical undressing hypothermia. They say it was cold, but he was driving in a car with a heater like a normal person. What a weird thing to say. So he crashes, gets out of the car, stumbles around, and within under an hour, he is suddenly suffering from this condition. It takes longer than that. He would have had to sit there without moving for hours in order for that to set in, at which point people would have realized he wasn't showing up where he was going. This theory makes the least sense, in my opinion, and simply adds credence to the fact that he staged the scene. He Googles how to disappear, then stumbles across this condition, which in his mind matches the current weather. He's assuming this is what people were going to think. I don't know. I can't say I disagree. I mean, like, that does seem possible. Look, all the stuff about him being perhaps gay, perhaps not, a very, very intense strict Christian family. I feel like that information, at the very least, the strict, intense, super Orthodox Christian family would have come out since this happened, and it hasn't. Um, not anything that I found, at least. Um, and then the person goes on to say, like, Occam's razor, it's essentially the most likely outcome is probably the truth. Um, I think, and then this person goes on to say, people like to theorize these situations into conspiracy world, which in reality, I don't believe this is such a strange case. In my opinion, he concocts this amateur, sheltered Christian kid looking to fly high on his own plan, stages a scene, starts hiking into the wild, realizes he's in way over his head, at which point he succumbs to wild hogs. So this is where the person lost me. Now, don't get me wrong. There are javelinas here and wild boars and hogs. Javelinas are essentially wild boars. Um, and they're mean and they will eat anything. Actually, I went to Mark's last night. Obviously, I did the bonus episode there. Before I left, I always leave food out for the birds, for sure. And I've started leaving food out for the javelinas because sometimes they come up and eat the bird food. And I want the bird food for the birds. So I've been putting out like dried corn cobs with, corn kernels on them still, but they're just dried out. I put out an apple pie that we didn't eat. And my pumpkins from Halloween are still somehow like totally good. It just feels ridiculous to still have them. So I kind of put them on the ground and was gonna throw them into kind of like the foliage area in front of my house and let them just kind of like decompose there, and the animals would eat them. Um, but I didn't do that yet. I just like had two of them on the ground. I came home this morning. All the corn cobs were picked clean. Apple pie gone. Pumpkin, there was like three pumpkin seeds on my like front walkway. I was like, where'd the pumpkin go? Ate it. Ate the whole thing. So like these javelinas, wild hogs, they will eat anything. They're like garbage disposals. I'm not sure how you go from everything that we just talked about in this story to he got eaten by wild hogs. That feels like a stretch to me. I mean, it's possible, but I think that this person perhaps could be projecting a little bit. So they went on to say, I've been homeless in my life during winter in Texas and about an hour from where this took place. I've slept outside during 30-degree weather, and though it sucks, most people won't die from one night. However, wild hogs in this area can get as big as fucking cows. No lie. I do think that's a lie. We'll have to double check that. I've never seen a wild hog as big as a cow. However, I'm not, they say they are rabid, mean, and travel in packs. Unless he had multiple high caliber rifles as well as night vision goggles, he wouldn't even know what hit him until it's too late. I believe they might eventually find bones, probably in the form of some rancher scouring his land and stumbling upon them, or a group of teenagers playing cowboys and Indians, but that's going to be years down the road. This is a tragic case of a lost young man just doing what he thought was going to be best for him at the moment. I feel very sad for his family, and I could obviously be wrong, but I'm quite certain it wasn't cartels, serial killers, or a grinder hookup gone bad. Those are far and few between and are very traceable with today's technology. No Texas State college student keeps a secret that he's trafficking drugs or people for the drug cartels. Someone would know, plain and simple. Then the person goes on to say, I used to traffic drugs, and this just doesn't make sense. Um, so again, I'm taking it with a grain of salt. I just thought it was interesting because I didn't see anything else about wild hogs or, you know, hiding his sexuality or anything like that. So this just, and again, I feel terrible for the family. I cannot imagine after 4 years, just the hurt and pain that and I can't imagine it. And I won't begin to try to. So I certainly don't want to put any misinformation or negative information or anything like that out there. I do not think that this is necessarily true. Just sharing yet another theory that I saw out there. And the sad truth is that he remains missing. His family continues to advocate for awareness about his case. They believe that someone somewhere might hold the key to solving this mystery. Every single year since his disappearance, so for the past 4 years, his family and friends gather for a candlelight vigil at the site of the crash and pray for answers. And there's also a volunteer search group that goes out looking for him every month, sometimes twice a month in the fall and winter. Kent Landry said these group of volunteers don't know his son, don't know Jason, but they all came together after seeing news stories about his disappearance. They provide extra help where Texas Search and Rescue and other law enforcement agencies aren't able to. Um, and Kent, I have a few quotes from Kent here. He says, unfortunately, as families of missing people know, your case gets pushed further and further back as new cases come online and resources are limited. They're kind of like, we don't know what else to do. And it just gets put in a file folder stuck in a drawer. It's a very strange place to be here. We expected to find out what happened in the first week. And here we are 4 years later, still without any answers. And I look at other parents, complaining about something their kid did or did not do. And I'm like, I would do anything to be able to yell at Jason. I would give anything to be disappointed by him. I would give anything to celebrate successes with him. And that made me, that plays, I'm not going to cry. That plays into my like recent minor obsession with death and how short our time here is and not wanting to take for granted or not appreciate all of the moments that I have with the people that I care about. Um, it's not even that time of the month, guys, anymore. And I'm still weepy about this. I don't know. But something that I think is very sweet, his parents now host a quirky sock drive every year and donate all of the funky socks that they get to people in need in memory of Jason, which is such a sweet, sweet idea. Um, and in 2021, I guess this is a little after the fact, the county, Caldwell County, where this happened, the sheriff's office took the case initially, but there was only one investigator in that county. And so Texas Attorney General got involved to help with the search, and the Attorney General's office created the Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit in 2021 to help law enforcement agencies across the state with cold case investigations. Jason's case was one of the first that this new unit investigated. And in 2023 alone, nearly 46,000 people went missing in Texas, which is just a shocking number to me. It's shocking. All numbers like that's 150,000 people die every day. That's shocking to me. So I will put this information that I'm about to share in the show notes. But if you want to help search for Jason, a volunteer group holds monthly searches. You can email findjasonlandry@gmail.com for more information. If you'd like to stay up to date with his case, you can join his family's Facebook group, Missing Person Jason Landry. There is still a $20,000 reward being offered for any information that leads to his whereabouts. You can call Sergeant Rachel Kading at the Office of the Attorney General at 512-936-0742 or leave an anonymous tip at 726-777-1359. I also have a few links here, and I will put that all in the show notes. And that is the very sad case of Jason Landry, who is still missing. So, my thoughts and well wishes. It's natural to say prayers. My thoughts and prayers are with his family. And it's more about the sentiment, I guess. So I should just go ahead and say that because I'm not a prayer. I don't pray. I don't go to church or temple. But I think now that I'm speaking this out loud, that it's more about just the sentiment of thoughts and prayers rather than like if I'm actually sitting down and praying. But so thoughts and prayers are with Jason's family and friends and everyone else who's lost someone who's gone missing. It's the unknown and not knowing what happened. I don't know how people live through that and wake up every day. It must take incredible strength. So, sending Jason's family strength. And I want to thank you guys for listening. Um, I hope I did the story justice and that maybe it will inspire you to look into this or additional missing persons cases. And who knows, maybe you can help. So, um, that's it. I'm going to sign off. I feel like I've been talking for several hours. And thank you guys so much. I love you all. We will be doing a Patreon Zoom for all. Well, I guess I was going to say for all there's only two tiers on Patreon. There's a $5 tier and a $2 tier. And the $2 tier gets you all the episodes without ads, video and audio. And the $5 tier, it's everything. So I don't know. But if you are interested in trying out Patreon and seeing what's on there, great. And if you're interested in just getting on Zoom with myself and my lovely patrons, and having a glass of wine or a coffee or whatever, we're going to do that Friday night at 6 Mountain Standard Time. So that's 5 Pacific time. And I guess that's 8 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock Central time. So I will post the Zoom link Friday sometime on Patreon. And yeah, about a half hour. I don't pay for Zoom, so I only have a total of 45 minutes to hold like a Zoom meeting. I don't know why it lets me record alone for much longer than that, but I guess if other people are joining, it can only be 45 minutes. So I'm thinking a half hour. If it goes well, we'll definitely do this like once a month. Mark will probably be here. He's not going to like sit next to me and do the Zoom, but he'll probably pop in and say hi. I don't know if that like, I don't think that that's like going to sway anybody one way or the other, but I'd love to meet you if you're a listener who wants to hop on Zoom and chit chat with not just with me. I'm excited for you guys to all like see and chat with each other too. Yeah. So that's Friday. And I hope you guys have a fantastical rest of your week. I love you all. And please, please, please leave me a comment on Spotify or a review on Apple Podcasts. Really helps the show. And go subscribe to the YouTube. Even if you don't watch YouTube or ever open YouTube, it's helpful. Well, I don't know if it's helpful, but it makes me feel good when I'm like, oh, look, some more people subscribe. They like it. So if you have a YouTube account and you're willing to just subscribe, even if you never like go on and watch it, that's fine. Okay. That's it. Looks like my rash has gone down on my neck a little bit. All right. I have to cut myself off, guys. I have to come up with some way to like cut myself off at the end so I don't just sit here and ramble to all of you for like the next 20 minutes about absolutely nothing. Plus the dogs are starving. So I'm going to go feed them. I really do appreciate every single one of you. All your good comments, all your constructive criticism comments, everything. And be safe out there. Okay. Bye guys.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.